I was always the forgotten child in my family. While my sister Cassie basked in constant praise and attention, I stood in the shadows, watching. My parents gave her everything, from expensive gifts to emotional support, while I learned to expect nothing. Now, at 37 years old, I had secretly built a fortune of $13 million through investments and hard work that my family knew nothing about. When Cassie accidentally discovered my wealth during a family gathering, she had a complete meltdown that exposed decades of family secrets and started a chain reaction that would forever change our relationship. Growing up in Westlake, Ohio, the pattern of favoritism was established early. Our house was modest but comfortable, a split level with 4 bedrooms on a quiet street lined with maple trees. My sister Cassie was 3 years older, and from my earliest memories, she was the star of our family show while I was barely part of the supporting cast. When Cassie brought home an A on her report card, my parents would take her out for ice cream and put her test paper on the refrigerator with a gold star magnet. When I brought home the same grade 2 years later, my mother would glance at it and say, "That's what we expect from you, Sterling," before sliding it into a kitchen drawer. My father, Jack, worked as an electrical engineer at a local manufacturing plant. He coached Cassie's soccer team every Saturday morning, never missing a game. He would come home hoarse from cheering her on, recounting her plays at dinner with animated hands. My baseball games, however, were attended only when convenient. Most times, my father would drop me off with a distracted, "Do your best, buddy," before driving away to take Cassie to her piano lessons. My mother, Diana, kept a beautiful leather-bound scrapbook for Cassie. It was filled with photographs, award certificates, newspaper clippings from school plays, and little mementos like ticket stubs from her first concert or the program from her dance recital. My mother spent hours arranging each page with colorful borders and handwritten captions. I discovered by accident there was no scrapbook for me. The few photos taken of me were tossed into a shoebox in the hall closet, unlabeled and gathering dust. Christmas mornings in our house were particularly revealing. Cassie would receive the latest trending toys, brand-name clothing, and at least one big-ticket item, like a new bike, or later, expensive electronics. My gifts were practical and unmemorable. Socks, school supplies, and books about responsibility. One year, when I was 10, Cassie received a computer for her room while I got a dictionary. "Your sister needs the computer for her creative writing," my mother explained when she saw my face fall. "You should be happy for her talents." Summer vacations were planned around Cassie's interests. If she wanted to see the Grand Canyon, we drove west. If she was going through a marine biology phase, we went to the coast. My suggestions for destinations were considered too boring or not educational enough and quickly dismissed. As the pattern repeated year after year, I developed a quiet determination that would shape my future. Instead of fighting for attention I knew would never come, I turned inward, focusing on building myself without their validation. At 14, I started mowing lawns in the neighborhood, shoveling snow in winter, and taking any odd job I could find. I opened a savings account at the local credit union, cycling there after school to make my deposits. My parents barely noticed my entrepreneurial efforts. "That's nice, Sterling," my mother would say absently when I mentioned a new client. My father would nod without looking up from his newspaper. But Cassie's part-time job at the mall was celebrated as a sign of her growing independence and responsibility, with my parents driving her to and from each shift and praising her maturity. I developed the habit of listening rather than speaking at family dinners, observing the dynamics as if I were an anthropologist studying a strange tribe. My mother would ask Cassie dozens of questions about her day, her friends, her thoughts and feelings. When the occasional, "How was your day, Sterling?" came my way, it felt like an obligatory afterthought, and my response rarely elicited follow-up questions. By 16, I had saved nearly $4,000, hidden in my account that my parents never asked about. I began reading books about investing from the public library, fascinated by the potential of making money work for me. While Cassie was being driven to shopping malls and friend gatherings, I was studying market trends and company reports. One evening during my junior year of high school, I overheard a conversation that confirmed what I had always suspected, but never wanted to believe. I was heading downstairs for a glass of water when I heard my parents talking in the kitchen. "Cassie's college fund is almost at $50,000, my father said. "With her grades, she should get into Northwestern, or maybe even Princeton. We'll need more if she gets into an Ivy League," my mother replied. "But it will be worth every penny for her future." I froze on the stairs, my hand gripping the railing. "What about Sterling's college?" my father asked, his voice lower. There was a pause before my mother answered. "He'll have to take out student loans. Like most kids. He's practical. He'll understand. Besides, he can always go to community college first, to save money." I stood there, a hollow feeling spreading in my chest. Not only had they created a college fund for Cassie, but never for me. They had already decided my future was worth less than hers. That night, as I lay awake staring at the glow in the dark stars on my ceiling, something hardened inside me. I made a silent promise to myself that I would never count on my parents for anything again. The next day, I went to the guidance counselor's office and requested information on scholarships, grants, and work-study programs. I began applying for every opportunity I could find, determined to forge my own path without their help or validation. In that moment of painful clarity, the seeds of my future success were planted in the fertile soil of neglect. State University of Ohio wasn't my first choice, but with my partial academic scholarship and the money I'd saved, it was the most practical option. Moving into my dormitory was a solitary affair. My father helped unload the car, but left within 30 minutes, explaining they needed to help Cassie prepare for her first semester at Northwestern. "She's very nervous about living so far from home," my mother said, hugging me briefly. "You'll be fine, Sterling. You always are." They had spent the previous 3 months taking Cassie shopping for dorm essentials, visiting her campus twice for orientation, and throwing her a lavish going-away party. My departure warranted a hastily purchased gift card to the campus bookstore and a reminder to study hard. I worked 3 jobs that first year: mornings at the campus cafeteria, afternoons at the library, and weekends at a local hardware store. Between shifts, I maintained a 3.9 GPA in business administration. My roommate, Dylan, often expressed amazement at my schedule. "Man, do you ever sleep?" he asked one night, finding me studying at 3 in the morning after returning from a late shift. "Sleep is inefficient," I joked, though the truth was, I found a strange comfort in constant motion. The busier I stayed, the less time I had to dwell on the family dynamics that had shaped me. During my sophomore year, I began investing small amounts in the stock market. The university library provided free access to financial journals and market reports that I devoured between classes. I started with $200 in a trading account, focusing on technology companies that seemed undervalued. Meanwhile, halfway through her first year at Northwestern, Cassie dropped out. According to my mother's tearful phone call, Cassie had found the academic environment too stressful and the social scene overwhelming. She had spent more time at parties than classes, resulting in failing grades and disciplinary warnings. Instead of facing consequences, Cassie was rewarded with a 3-month finding herself trip across Europe, funded entirely by my parents. They dipped into their retirement savings without hesitation, assuring her that education isn't everything and that real-world experiences are valuable too. When Cassie returned from Europe with nothing but expensive souvenirs and stories of hostels, she announced she wanted to open a boutique clothing store. My parents remortgaged their house to provide her with startup capital of $75,000. I graduated magna cum laude after 4 years of non-stop work and study. My parents attended the ceremony but left immediately after to help Cassie deal with a crisis at her new shop. They had stayed just long enough to take one photograph and give me a card with $200 tucked inside, a sum that wouldn't cover even a fraction of what I'd spent on books that year. "We're proud of you," my father said distractedly, checking his phone. "Cassie's having trouble with her inventory system. We should get back." I moved to Columbus after graduation, accepting an entry-level position at a tech startup. My communication with my family dwindled to occasional phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. During these calls, my mother would spend 20 minutes updating me on Cassie's life before asking about mine, often interrupting my responses with unrelated questions about her favorite child. At the startup, I immersed myself in learning every aspect of the business. I volunteered for projects no one wanted, stayed late to help with system upgrades, and used my lunch breaks to study market trends. My boss, Trevor, noticed my dedication and began mentoring me, sharing insights from his 20 years in the industry. "You've got good instincts," he told me, after I identified a potential efficiency that saved the company thousands of dollars. "But more importantly, you've got grit." In my spare time, I continued making small investments. I lived frugally in a studio apartment, drove a used car, and invested every spare dollar. I developed a system for researching companies, focusing on emerging technologies with practical applications. 6 months after Cassie opened her boutique, it failed spectacularly. She had no business plan, no understanding of market demographics, and spent too much on high-end inventory that didn't sell. Rather than letting her learn from the experience, my parents paid off her business debts and set her up in a condo they couldn't afford. "She's devastated by the failure," my mother explained when I questioned the wisdom of this decision during a rare family dinner. "We need to support her while she recovers. Maybe she needs to learn from her mistakes," I suggested carefully. My father's face hardened. "That's the difference between you two, Sterling. You've always been cold and calculated. Your sister feels things deeply. She's passionate and creative. And broke," I added, immediately regretting my frankness. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked at me as if I'd slapped her. My father shook his head in disappointment. "You've always been jealous of your sister," he said finally. "We hoped you'd outgrow it." I excused myself early from dinner that night and drove back to Columbus with a strange mix of anger and relief. Their perception of me was so fundamentally wrong that it was almost laughable. I wasn't jealous of Cassie. I was tired of the double standard that had defined our entire lives. Then came the moment that would secretly change everything. At 26, I had invested $5,000 in a small tech company developing security software. It was my largest investment to date, representing months of careful saving. The company was acquired by a major corporation, and overnight, my investment multiplied. My trading account balance showed just over $100,000. I stared at the screen in my apartment, heart racing. This wasn't just a good return. It was life-changing. And in that moment, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I would tell no one, especially not my family. Instead, I would use this as the foundation to build real wealth, proving to myself what I was capable of, while maintaining the appearance of a modestly successful professional. The neglected second child would create his own destiny, unnoticed and underestimated by those who should have believed in him first. Over the next decade, I methodically built my fortune. Starting with that unexpected windfall, I diversified into commercial real estate, tech startups with solid fundamentals, and established companies with innovative pipelines. I rented a comfortable but unremarkable apartment, drove a reliable but not flashy car, and continued living well below my means. By 30, I was worth $3 million. By 35, that number had grown to $10 million. Now, at 37, my net worth stood at $13 million, a figure known only to me, my financial advisor Sam, and eventually, Amanda. I met Amanda at a friend's barbecue when I was 34. She was a kindergarten teacher with an infectious laugh and a talent for seeing through pretense. On our third date, when I took her to a casual diner instead of the upscale restaurant she had mentioned wanting to try, she jokingly asked if I was hiding something. "You drive a 6-year-old Honda but wear a watch worth more than most cars," she observed. "You live in a neighborhood that screams middle management. But you understand fine wines better than my friend who's a sommelier. What's your deal, Sterling?" Her directness caught me off guard. After years of deflection and half-truths, I found myself wanting to be honest with her. Over dessert, I shared the broad strokes of my financial situation, swearing her to secrecy. I've never told anyone in my life about this, I concluded. Especially not my family. Instead of being impressed by the numbers, Amanda was more interested in why I kept my success hidden. That must be exhausting, she said, reaching for my hand. Hiding such a big part of yourself from everyone. In the following weeks, I opened up to Amanda about my family dynamics. She listened without judgment, but didn't shy away from hard questions. Have you ever considered that keeping this secret is still letting them control part of your life? She asked one evening as we walked along the riverfront. You're making decisions based on their potential reactions. Maybe, I admitted. But it's also about protection. Money changes how people see you and what they expect from you. Amanda became my emotional anchor, the one person with whom I could be completely myself. Our relationship deepened, and for the first time, I began to envision a future that included sharing my life with someone else. Meanwhile, Cassie continued her pattern of failed ventures and relationships, each time being rescued by our increasingly financially strained parents. She opened and closed 3 more businesses, a yoga studio, a gourmet pet bakery, and a life coaching practice. Each failure was attributed to market conditions or people not understanding her vision rather than her lack of business acumen or follow-through. Our parents, now in their early 60s, had depleted their retirement savings and taken on considerable debt to support Cassie's lifestyle. My father delayed his retirement, taking on consulting work to make ends meet. My mother developed stress-related health issues, but continued working part-time at a department store to help pay the bills. During my infrequent visits home, I noticed the signs of their financial strain: the delayed home repairs, the careful grocery shopping, the worry lines deepening on my father's face. Yet whenever I subtly suggested they might need to establish boundaries with Cassie, they became defensive. You don't understand how sensitive your sister is, my mother would say. She needs our support. One Sunday afternoon, while Amanda and I were enjoying a rare day off together, my phone rang. Seeing my parents' number, I almost let it go to voicemail but answered out of a sense of obligation. Sterling, we need to talk to you about something important, my mother began, her voice tight with tension. Is everything okay? Are you both healthy? I asked, immediately concerned. We're fine, honey. It's about your sister. Of course it was. I caught Amanda's eye and mouthed Cassie drama as I put the phone on speaker. What's she done now? Don't take that tone, my father interjected. Your sister has a real opportunity to turn things around. She's launching a new business, a mobile app for fashion coordination. It's going to be big. She needs some startup capital, my mother continued. Just $30,000 to hire a developer. We would help her ourselves, but with the second mortgage and your father's medical bills from last year. Their voices faded as a familiar numbness spread through me. After decades of favoritism and years of financial rescues for Cassie, they were finally asking me for money, but not for themselves, for her. They had never once asked how I was doing financially, never shown interest in my career beyond superficial questions at holiday gatherings. Sterling? Are you still there? My mother asked. I'm here, I replied, my voice carefully neutral. Have you considered that maybe Cassie needs to learn how to stand on her own? This would be, what, her 5th failed business? 6th. My father corrected automatically, then realized his mistake. But this one is different. She's really done her research, has she? Has she talked to actual developers about realistic costs? Does she have a business plan? Market analysis? Potential investors besides her parents? The silence on the other end of the line was telling. That's not fair, Sterling. My mother finally said. You've always been naturally good with money and business. Cassie has other gifts. Like what, exactly? I asked, frustration seeping into my voice. What has she actually accomplished in the last 15 years, besides draining your retirement fund? That's enough, my father snapped. We didn't call to hear you criticize your sister. Either you want to help the family, or you don't. The family, I repeated slowly. Or, Cassie, they're one and the same. My mother said softly. We're a family, Sterling. We support each other. Except that support only seems to flow in one direction, I pointed out. When I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college. Where was this family support? That's different, my father said dismissively. You've always been self-sufficient, independent, sometimes coldly so. Your sister feels things more deeply. She's passionate, creative, so you've said. For my entire life. After I hung up, Amanda watched me pace our living room, working through my frustration. You know what kills me? I finally said. They've always seen me as the cold, unfeeling one, the practical, emotionless son who doesn't need nurturing or support. They created that narrative when I was just a kid looking for the same love they showered on Cassie. Amanda came over and wrapped her arms around me. Have you ever told them how you feel? What would be the point? I sighed. They wouldn't believe me. In their eyes, Cassie is the sensitive artist, and I'm the calculating robot. That's never going to change. Maybe not, Amanda agreed. But maybe it's time to stop playing the role they assigned you. You've built this amazing life partly to prove them wrong, but they don't even know about it. At some point, you have to ask yourself who you're still trying to convince. I didn't have an answer for her then. But her question lingered in my mind, planting a seed that would eventually force me to confront the truth about my family and myself. The request for money, though declined, marked a turning point. My parents began calling more frequently, often starting with small talk, before circling back to Cassie's latest crisis or opportunity. I found myself screening calls and making excuses to avoid visits. The distance between us grew, yet paradoxically, they seemed more interested in my life than ever before. What they didn't know was that everything was about to change. In a few short weeks, the carefully constructed walls between my 2 lives would come crashing down, triggered by a single careless moment at a family gathering none of us would ever forget. My father's 65th birthday should have been a simple celebration. Amanda and I drove the 2 hours to my parents' home, bringing a thoughtfully selected bottle of scotch that cost more than I would normally spend around my family. I had carefully researched affordable yet respectable brands to maintain my facade of moderate success. The small ranch-style house looked tired in the afternoon Sunday. The paint was peeling in places, the garden beds overrun with weeds. Inside, my mother had prepared a modest spread of finger foods and a homemade cake. Cassie arrived an hour late with a hastily purchased card and no gift, explaining she was between payments from clients. At 34, my sister still dressed like a college student, with carefully distressed jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. Her blonde hair was styled in what she called deliberate bedhead, and she wore the same excessive eyeliner she'd favored since high school. Despite her age, she carried herself with the expectant air of someone perpetually waiting to be discovered for her innate specialness. Sterling and Amanda, right? Cassie greeted us with quick hugs. God, I'm dying for a drink. Mom's being weird about serving alcohol before Dad blows out his candles. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. It's not weird to want your father to have a proper birthday moment, Cassie. Everything doesn't have to revolve around your immediate desires. This mild rebuke was the closest I'd ever heard my mother come to criticizing Cassie. Perhaps years of financial strain were finally testing even her patience. The celebration proceeded with forced cheerfulness. My father opened his presents, expressing genuine appreciation for the scotch Amanda and I brought. My mother served cake and coffee, making stilted small talk about neighbors and local news. I noticed how much older my parents looked than their actual ages, worn down by years of worry. About an hour into the gathering, Cassie's phone died mid-text. Ugh. My charger's in the car, she groaned. Sterling, can I borrow your phone for like 2 seconds? I need to tell my friend where to meet me later. Without thinking, I handed her my phone and continued my conversation with my father about his consulting work. It wasn't until I heard Cassie's sharp intake of breath that I realized my mistake. What the actual hell, Sterling? I turned to see Cassie staring at my phone, her expression a mixture of shock and growing anger. My stomach dropped as I realized what had happened. I had received a notification from my investment app, which I had forgotten to log out of that morning after checking my portfolio. The notification displayed a summary of my recent returns, clearly showing an account balance in the millions. "Is this some kind of joke?" Cassie demanded, turning the phone so everyone could see the screen. $13 million? Are you kidding me right now? The room went silent. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stood frozen, cake fork suspended midway to his mouth. Amanda reached for my hand under the table, giving it a supportive squeeze. That's private, Cassie," I said, reaching for my phone. "Give it back." "Private?" she echoed, her voice rising. "You have $13 million and you're keeping it private from your family? From your parents who are about to lose their house because the bank is foreclosing?" This was news to me. I looked at my parents, whose expressions confirmed Cassie wasn't exaggerating. "You're being foreclosed on?" I asked them. "Why didn't you tell me?" "We didn't want to burden you," my mother said quietly. "We thought we could figure something out." "Figure something out?" Cassie laughed bitterly. "Like what, Mom? A miracle?" "Meanwhile, your precious Sterling is sitting on a fortune and watching you suffer." "That's not fair," Amanda interjected. "Sterling didn't know about the foreclosure." "Stay out of this," Cassie snapped. "You're probably just with him for his money anyway." "Cassie," my mother gasped. "Apologize right now." "Apologize? Are you serious? He should be apologizing to you. Do you know how many nights I've listened to you cry about bills, Mom? How many times Dad has talked about feeling like a failure because he can't retire? And all along, Mr. Successful over here could have helped, but chose not to." "It's not that simple," I began. But Cassie was on a roll. "Not that simple? What's not simple about helping your parents when they're in trouble? They gave you everything." The irony of her statement hit me like a physical blow. They gave me everything? When had they ever put me first? When had they ever sacrificed for me the way they had repeatedly done for Cassie? "They gave you everything," I corrected, my voice low and controlled. "They gave you the college fund, the business startups, the constant bailouts. They gave you their retirement savings and the equity in their home. Don't talk to me about what they gave, Cassie." My father stood up, his face flushed. "That's enough, Sterling. Your sister has had different challenges than you." "Different challenges?" I echoed. "Like what, exactly? The challenge of never facing consequences? The challenge of being praised for every minimal effort while I was ignored unless I was perfect?" "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "We've always been proud of you." "Proud, but uninvolved," I countered. "Proud from a distance. Proud in theory, but not in practice." "This isn't about ancient history," Cassie interrupted. "This is about you having millions, while Mom and Dad lose their home. What kind of son are you?" "The kind who was never treated like a son," I wanted to say. "The kind who learned early that he could only count on himself." Instead, I stood up, suddenly needing to escape the suffocating tension of the room. "I'm leaving," I announced. "This isn't the time or place for this conversation." "Running away?" "Typical," Cassie sneered. "You always did avoid emotional confrontation." "Because emotions were your territory," I replied. "Your weapon and your shield. The rest of us weren't allowed to have feelings that might compete with yours." I turned to my parents. "We need to talk, but not like this. Not with Cassie turning this into another drama with herself at the center." Call me when you're ready to have an adult conversation. As Amanda and I headed for the door, my father called after me. Sterling, wait. We didn't know about the money. Why would you keep that from us? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Think about it, Dad. Really think about why I might not have wanted you to know. The drive home was mostly silent, both of us processing the confrontation. It wasn't until we were halfway back to Columbus that Amanda spoke. Are you okay? No, I admitted. But I think maybe that needed to happen. It's been building for a lifetime. My phone had been buzzing with texts and calls, which I ignored. When we finally reached home, I checked the messages. Most were from Cassie, alternating between angry accusations and demands that I make things right. One particularly disturbing voicemail included her sobbing about how I'd always been the favorite because I was Dad's real child, a comment that made no sense to me. There were also messages from my parents, more measured but clearly shaken, asking me to call them as soon as possible. But what truly stunned me was discovering, through a mutual friend's concerned text, that Cassie had posted about my financial status on social media. Her post portrayed me as a greedy brother who watched his family struggle while hoarding wealth. She had tagged family members, hometown acquaintances, and even some of my former classmates. The secret I had kept for over a decade was now public knowledge, shared without my consent, and framed in the worst possible light. As I scrolled through the comments expressing shock and judgment, I felt a strange sense of liberation beneath my anger. The mask was off. For better or worse, I no longer had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. What are you going to do? Amanda asked, reading over my shoulder. I don't know yet, I replied truthfully. But I'm done letting them write the narrative of who I am and what I owe them. Little did I know that Cassie's social media ambush was just the beginning. The real assault on my life and privacy was about to begin, pushing me toward a decision that would permanently alter my family dynamics. The week following my father's birthday was a master class in boundary violation. It began with Cassie showing up at my office building, creating a scene in the lobby until security escorted her out. She had somehow found out where I worked and demanded to speak to me about family obligations. My phone rang constantly with calls from extended family members I barely knew, each offering opinions on how much money I should give my parents. Distant cousins and family friends I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reached out, some to express disappointment in my selfishness, others to subtly inquire if I might be interested in investing in their business ideas. Even Amanda wasn't spared. Cassie somehow obtained her work email and sent a long, emotional plea, asking her to make Sterling see reason and do the right thing for the family that raised him. She actually wrote that I should reconsider my relationship with you if you don't help your parents, Amanda told me, forwarding the email. As if my love comes with a price tag attached, the final straw came on Thursday evening. Amanda and I had just finished dinner when the doorbell rang. Opening it revealed my parents and Cassie standing in the hallway, looking determined. We need to talk, my father said, attempting to step past me into the apartment. This isn't a good time, I replied, blocking the entrance. And showing up unannounced isn't appropriate. When would be appropriate, Sterling? Cassie demanded. After the bank takes Mom and Dad's house? After they're living in a motel? Please, my mother added, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Just hear us out. Against my better judgment, I let them in. Amanda excused herself to give us privacy, squeezing my shoulder supportively as she passed. Once seated in our living room, my father launched into an explanation of their financial situation. They had taken out a second mortgage 2 years ago to fund Cassie's 6th business attempt, a sustainable clothing line that had failed within months. Now facing foreclosure, they had exhausted all conventional options for refinancing. We've worked hard our whole lives, my father concluded. We never thought we'd be in this position at our age. I understand that, I said carefully. But I'm curious why you think this is my responsibility to fix. Because you're our son, my mother said, as if that explained everything. Family helps family. Does it? Because when I needed help with college, The family policy seemed to be that I should handle it myself. When I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet, no one offered assistance. That was different, my father insisted. You were always independent, Sterling. You never needed our help the way Cassie did. I didn't need it, or you never offered it. This isn't about the past, Cassie interjected. This is about Mom and Dad needing help now, and you being in a position to give it. Actually, I think this is very much about the past, I countered. About patterns that were established decades ago, that you all expect to continue indefinitely. My father leaned forward, his expression earnest. Son, I don't know how you managed to build such wealth, and right now, I don't care. What matters is that you have the ability to help your family in a time of crisis. You owe us that much. Owe you? I repeated, the word landing like a slap. What exactly do I owe you, Dad? For the college fund you never started for me? For the emotional support you never provided? For always treating me like the dependable afterthought, while Cassie was the precious focus of your world? That's not true, my mother protested. We love you both equally. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's priorities. It's who you show up for and who you don't. By that measure, your love has never been equal. Cassie stood up, her face flushed with anger. This is pathetic. You're using ancient history to justify letting Mom and Dad become homeless? All because you have some childhood jealousy issues? Sit down, Cassie, I said firmly. This isn't your negotiation to lead. To my surprise, she complied, though her expression remained mutinous. Here's what I don't understand, I continued. You need about $150,000 to clear the second mortgage and get current on the first, right? My father nodded. And you've known about this crisis for months, possibly longer. Yet you never directly asked me for help until after Cassie discovered my financial status. Why is that? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We didn't want to burden you, my mother finally said. But you're fine burdening me now? What changed? We know you can afford it now, my father admitted. So it wasn't about burdening me. It was about not knowing if I could help. Which means you've never had any real idea of who I am, or what I've accomplished, because you never bothered to ask. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. I told them you'd help, Cassie said suddenly. After the birthday, when we were talking about options, I told them you promised to pay off the mortgage and invest in my new business plan. What? I stared at her in disbelief. I never promised any such thing. I know, she said with a shrug. But you should have, and now you can. Cassie, my father groaned. We discussed this. No pressure tactics. So you knew she was lying? I asked him. You knew I never made that promise? We hoped there was a misunderstanding, my mother said weakly. I took a deep breath, struggling to maintain my composure. Let me get this straight. You allowed Cassie to lie about promises I never made, creating expectations I never agreed to. Then you show up at my home, unannounced, to collect on these fictional promises. And I'm supposed to just write a check. Because family? When you put it like that, it sounds terrible, my mother said. Because it is terrible, Mom. It's manipulative and disrespectful. Cassie rolled her eyes. It's just money to you, Sterling. Money you obviously don't need. Why are you being so difficult about this? It's not about the money, Cassie. It's about respect. It's about acknowledging that you can't treat people poorly their entire lives and then expect them to bail you out when you're in trouble. My father's face darkened. So that's it? You're refusing to help? I didn't say that. But I won't be manipulated or guilted into anything. And I won't enable patterns that have been destructive for our family for decades. Cassie stood up again, grabbing her purse. This is ridiculous. He clearly doesn't care about you guys at all. He's going to sit in his fancy apartment with his millions while you lose everything. Cassie, that's enough. My father said tiredly. No, it's not enough. You guys gave him everything. You supported him. Encouraged him. When? I interrupted. When did they support or encourage me, Cassie? Give me one specific example. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. They came to your college graduation. They came to the ceremony and left immediately because you had a crisis at your shop. Try again. They let you live in their house growing up. I couldn't help laughing at the absurdity. That's your evidence? That they fulfilled the basic legal obligation of housing their minor child? You're twisting everything, Cassie shouted. You're making them sound like terrible parents when they've sacrificed everything for us. For you, I corrected. They sacrificed everything for you, Cassie. Their retirement, their home equity, their financial security. And now you expect me to sacrifice too, without question or complaint. My mother began to cry, quiet tears sliding down her cheeks. We never meant to make you feel less loved, Sterling. We thought you were okay. You seemed so self-sufficient, so capable. I became self-sufficient because I had to be, I replied, my voice softening slightly. I became capable because no one was going to swoop in and save me if I failed. That's not fair, my father protested. We've always been proud of you. Proud but uninvolved. Proud from a distance. And now you're only here because you need something from me. Cassie made a disgusted noise and headed for the door. This is pointless. He's going to let you become homeless because of some perceived childhood slights. I can't listen to this anymore. After she slammed the door behind her, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Is that really what you think, Sterling? My father finally asked. That we didn't love you as much as your sister? I think you loved me in theory, but prioritized her in practice. Every time there was a choice to be made about resources, attention, support, or validation, she came first. And now you're here asking me to maintain that pattern by bailing you out of a financial crisis created largely by your inability to set boundaries with her. My mother wiped her eyes. We never saw it that way. I know you didn't. That's part of the problem. Another long silence stretched between us. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him, slumped in his chair with the weight of decades of decisions pressing down on him. What happens now? He finally asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. But I won't be rushed or manipulated into a decision. I need time to think, and I expect you to respect that. After they left, I found Amanda in our bedroom, pretending to read but obviously waiting for me. That sounded intense, she said, setting aside her book. It was. I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. They really don't see it, Amanda. They genuinely believe they were fair and supportive parents who just happened to have one child who needed more help than the other. People often rewrite history to make peace with their choices, she said gently. Especially parents. What would you do? I asked her. If you were in my position? She considered the question carefully. I would help them, but not without conditions, not without addressing the underlying patterns. Otherwise, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a wound that will keep reopening. Her answer resonated with something forming in my own mind. A way forward that might break the cycle, while still acknowledging the complexity of family bonds. As I lay awake that night, a plan began to take shape, one that would require courage, clarity, and a willingness to finally speak truths that had been buried for too long. Over the next week, I did something I'd never done before. I prioritized my emotional health over my work. I took 3 days of personal leave, unprecedented in my highly structured life, and spent them reflecting, researching, and preparing for what came next. I began by consulting a therapist, Dr. Larson, who specialized in family dynamics. In 2 intensive sessions, I unpacked decades of complex feelings, gaining clarity about what I wanted from my relationship with my parents and sister moving forward. It sounds like you're ready to stop playing the role assigned to you in your family system, Dr. Larson observed during our second session. That's healthy, but be prepared for resistance. Family systems fight to maintain homeostasis, even when that balance is dysfunctional. I'm expecting nuclear-level resistance, I admitted. But I can't keep pretending anymore. Next, I consulted with my financial advisor, Sam, and a family law attorney to understand my options for helping my parents while protecting my own interests. Together, we crafted a financial solution that would address the immediate crisis without enabling further dysfunction. Finally, I talked extensively with Amanda, whose insight and support proved invaluable. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, she assured me. Just remember that this isn't just about money. It's about establishing healthy boundaries for our future together. Our future together. The phrase lingered in my mind, reinforcing my resolve. This wasn't just about healing old wounds. It was about creating a foundation for the family Amanda and I might one day build. By Friday, I was ready. I sent a text to my parents requesting a family meeting on neutral ground, a private room at a local restaurant I had reserved for Sunday afternoon. I specified that Cassie should attend, but that they should come prepared for an honest conversation, not just a financial negotiation. My father replied simply, "We'll be there." Sunday arrived with a knot of anticipation in my stomach. Amanda drove us to the restaurant, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze before I exited the car. "I'll pick you up in 2 hours," she said. "Call if you need me sooner." "I love you," I told her, meaning it more than ever. "I love you too. Stay strong." The private dining room was elegant but understated, with a rectangular table set for 4 and soft lighting that created an intimate atmosphere. I had arrived 30 minutes early to prepare, arranging the materials I'd brought in neat stacks at my place setting. My parents arrived precisely on time, looking apprehensive. My father had made an effort, wearing a tie I recognized as his special occasions accessory. My mother had done her hair and applied makeup, signs that she viewed this as an important event. Cassie, predictably, arrived 15 minutes late, dressed casually, and wearing an expression that mixed boredom with lingering resentment. "Thank you for coming," I began once everyone was seated. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet like this." "Cut to the chase, Sterling," Cassie interrupted. "Are you going to help Mom and Dad or not?" "Cassie," my father warned, "we agreed to let your brother lead this conversation." I nodded appreciatively to my father. "Before we discuss anything financial, there are some things I need to say, and evidence I want to share with you." "Evidence?" my mother echoed, confused. I opened the first folder I'd prepared. "Yes. Because for years, I felt like I was crazy for believing I was treated differently than Cassie. Like maybe I was imagining things, or being overly sensitive. So I decided to gather proof. From the folder, I removed a stack of photographs. I laid them out on the table, one by one. These are from Christmas mornings, ages 7 through 16. I've listed the approximate value of gifts received by each of us, based on my research of retail prices at the time. The disparity was stark when presented visually. In every photo, Cassie was surrounded by numerous, substantial gifts, while my pile was noticeably smaller. "This isn't about being materialistic," I explained as they examined the photos. "It's about the message these differences sent to a child about his worth in the family." Next came copies of bank statements and financial records. This is the accounting of Cassie's college fund, which totaled $53,000 by the time she enrolled at Northwestern. "And this," I said, placing another document beside it, "is evidence that no such fund was ever created for me." I continued methodically through the evidence I'd gathered. Calendars showing my parents' attendance at Cassie's events versus mine. Transcripts showing identical grades, but vastly different parental reactions. And finally, a spreadsheet detailing the financial support provided to each of us over the years. Since Cassie's first business failure at age 22, You've given her approximately $220,000 in direct financial support, not counting free housing, car payments, insurance, and other indirect assistance. My parents stared at the documents, their expressions a mixture of shock and growing discomfort. Cassie shifted in her seat, uncharacteristically silent. Again, this isn't about the money itself. It's about the pattern it represents. The pattern that's led us to this moment. My father cleared his throat. Sterling, I don't know what to say. Seeing it all laid out like this, it looks bad, I know. But I didn't compile this to shame you or to hurt you. I did it because we need to acknowledge reality before we can move forward. My mother wiped away a tear. We never meant to make you feel less valued, Sterling. We love you so much. I believe that you love me, I said gently. But love, without equal respect, equal consideration, and equal support, isn't the foundation for a healthy relationship. So, this is your revenge? Cassie finally spoke. Humiliating Mom and Dad to get back at us. No, Cassie. This is me finally being honest about my experience in this family, and asking for honesty in return. I turned to my parents. I want to understand. Help me understand why there was such a dramatic difference in how you treated us. Was it something about me? Did I do something wrong? My parents exchanged a look that contained volumes of unspoken communication. My mother reached for my father's hand, squeezing it tightly. Tell him, she said softly. It's time. My father took a deep breath, looking suddenly much older than his 65 years. Sterling, there's something you need to know. Something we should have told you a long time ago. The room seemed to still, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Cassie isn't, he began, then faltered. What I mean is, biologically speaking, Cassie isn't your father's biological daughter. My mother finished for him, her voice barely above a whisper. She's the result of an affair I had. Early in our marriage, the revelation hit me like a physical blow. I looked at Cassie, whose face had gone white with shock. Clearly, this was news to her as well. What? She gasped. That's not. You never. Dad? My father's eyes were fixed on the table. I found out when your mother was 4 months pregnant. We nearly divorced. But eventually, I decided to stay, to raise you as my own. So all this time, I began, trying to process the implications. Your father overcompensated, my mother explained, tears now flowing freely. He was determined to prove to himself, to me, to the world, that he could love Cassie as his own, that he was a big enough man to embrace a child that wasn't biologically his. And in proving that point, you neglected your biological son, I said. The pieces finally falling into place. The son who reminded you of the marriage you had before the affair. We didn't realize we were doing it, my father insisted, his voice breaking, not consciously, but seeing all this evidence. I can't deny the pattern. Cassie stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane. You're telling me my entire life has been a lie? That Dad isn't really my father? That all the special treatment was just guilt? Cassie, please, my mother begged. Sit down. Let's talk about this as a family. Family? Cassie laughed bitterly. What family? The one built on lies and secrets? No thanks. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, the door slamming behind her with finality. In the heavy silence that followed, I tried to absorb the weight of this revelation. The mystery of my childhood suddenly had an explanation, though not one I'd ever imagined. I'm sorry. I finally said to my parents. I didn't know. I didn't mean to force this out into the open. It's not your fault, my mother said, wiping her eyes. This secret has been poisoning our family for 34 years. Maybe it's time for the truth to come out. My father looked at me directly for what felt like the first time in years. "Can you forgive us, Sterling? For how we treated you?" The question hung in the air between us, complex and weighted with decades of hurt. But in that moment, seeing their genuine remorse and understanding the tortured logic that had driven their choices, I felt something unexpected: compassion. "I'm working on it," I answered honestly. "And I want to help you. But not unconditionally, and not in a way that continues the patterns of the past." From my briefcase, I removed the documents my financial advisor and I had prepared. "I've set up a trust that will pay off your second mortgage and bring your primary mortgage current. The trust will also make your monthly mortgage payments for the next 5 years, giving you time to rebuild your retirement savings." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Sterling, that's so generous." "There are conditions," I continued. "First, you both agree to attend financial counseling. Second, no more financial bailouts for Cassie. She needs to stand on her own feet. And third, we all commit to family therapy. Together. Including Cassie, if she's willing. We need to address the damage done by decades of inequality and secrets." My father nodded slowly. "Those are fair conditions." "More than fair. I don't want to control you or punish you," I explained. "I want us to heal, to build something healthier going forward. But that can't happen without honesty and equal respect for everyone in the family." As we worked through the details of the arrangement, I felt a cautious hope taking root. This wasn't the end of our family story, but perhaps the beginning of a new chapter, one written with more awareness, more balance, and more truth than what had come before. When I left the restaurant 2 hours later, Amanda was waiting in the car, her face anxious. "How did it go?" she asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "It was revelatory," I replied, "in ways I never expected." As we drove home, I recounted the meeting, including the shocking revelation about Cassie's paternity. "So that explains it," Amanda said thoughtfully. "Not excuses it, but explains it." "Exactly. And now we have a chance to build something new from the ruins of the old patterns. If everyone's willing to do the work, and if they're not," I considered the question, "then at least I'll know I tried. That I offered a path forward based on truth rather than denial." Amanda reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you. What you did today took incredible courage. I couldn't have done it without you," I told her. "You helped me see that I had choices beyond silent resentment or complete estrangement." As we pulled into our driveway, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if a burden I'd carried since childhood had finally been set down. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt like we were all walking it together, eyes open to the truth of who we were and who we might become. The months following the revelation unfolded in ways I could never have predicted. Cassie disappeared for 3 weeks after storming out of the restaurant, not responding to calls or texts from any of us. My parents were frantic with worry until she finally sent a brief message saying she was fine and needed space to process everything. Meanwhile, the financial arrangements I'd put in place brought immediate relief to my parents. The second mortgage was paid off. The primary mortgage brought current, and the threat of foreclosure eliminated. As agreed, they began attending financial counseling sessions, learning to create and maintain a budget for the first time in their adult lives. "We should have done this 30 years ago," my father admitted during one of our now regular Sunday phone calls. "I can't believe how little we understood about managing money." Our first family therapy session occurred 6 weeks after the confrontation, with Cassie conspicuously absent. Dr. Melissa Winters, the therapist I'd carefully selected for her experience with family estrangement and secrets, guided us through the initial awkwardness. "Healing doesn't happen all at once," she reminded us, "and it rarely happens in the time frame we want. Be patient with the process, and with each other." My mother used these sessions to express her deep regret, not just for the affair that had created our family dynamics, but for her role in perpetuating the inequality between Cassie and me. I think I was overcompensating too, she admitted tearfully. Trying to prove to your father that his sacrifice in raising another man's child wasn't a mistake. Every time he showed Cassie special attention, I doubled down to show my gratitude. My father struggled more with the therapy process, often growing defensive, before eventually acknowledging his part in the dysfunctional patterns. I never wanted to hurt you, Sterling, he said during a particularly emotional session. But I was so focused on proving I could love Cassie unconditionally that I took your love for granted. I assumed you didn't need the same attention because you seemed so self-sufficient. I see now how wrong that was. 8 weeks into our therapy, Cassie finally agreed to join a session. She arrived looking thinner and more subdued than I'd ever seen her, the habitual confidence in her posture replaced by a wary vulnerability. I'm only here because I have questions, she announced, refusing to make eye contact with any of us. Not because I've forgiven anyone. Dr. Winters created a safe space for Cassie to express her sense of betrayal and confusion. Who was her biological father? Why had she never been told the truth? How much of her parents' support had been genuine love versus guilt and overcompensation? The answers were painful but necessary. My mother revealed that Cassie's biological father had been a colleague who'd moved abroad before she discovered the pregnancy. He had never known about Cassie, and my mother had lost touch with him decades ago. But your dad, Jack, has been your real father in every way that matters, my mother insisted. The love he has for you is genuine, even if it sometimes came from a complicated place. During these difficult conversations, I found myself in an unexpected role, the mediator, the steady presence, while the others processed their shattered perspectives. The practical, emotionless trait my parents had always attributed to me became a strength in navigating these troubled waters. As the months passed and therapy continued, subtle shifts occurred in our family dynamic. My parents began treating me with a new respect, actively interested in my work and life in ways they'd never been before. Cassie, after the initial shock subsided, began the hard work of redefining herself outside of the golden child identity she'd carried for so long. I don't even know who I am without that, she confessed during one session. Every time I failed at something, Mom and Dad would rush in to fix it. I never had to develop resilience or self-discipline. I never had consequences. Perhaps the most significant change came when Cassie expressed interest in developing actual business skills, rather than jumping into another doomed venture. When she mentioned taking some community college courses in business administration, I saw an opportunity for a different kind of relationship between us. I could help you with that, I offered cautiously. Not by funding it unconditionally, but by mentoring you, teaching you what I've learned about business planning and execution. Her initial reaction was defensive. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, Cassie. It's what siblings do. They help each other grow. After considering this, she tentatively accepted. Thus began a new phase in our relationship, meeting weekly at a coffee shop to review her coursework and discuss basic business principles. These sessions were awkward at first, laden with the weight of our complicated history. But gradually, a genuine connection began to form. You're actually a good teacher, she admitted after I helped her prepare for a midterm exam. Patient, clear, and you're smarter than you give yourself credit for, I replied. When you apply yourself, you grasp concepts quickly. These small, honest exchanges laid the groundwork for something neither of us had ever experienced before. A relationship based on mutual respect, rather than competition or resentment. 6 months after the confrontation, another major shift occurred in my life. Amanda and I got engaged, deciding on a small, intimate ceremony, rather than a lavish event. When I called my parents with the news, their reaction was warm, but tinged with uncertainty. We'd like to contribute to the wedding, my father said hesitantly. If that's okay with you. In the past, I would have refused, maintaining my independence as a matter of principle, but the healing work we'd done allowed me to see their offer for what it was. Not obligation, but a genuine desire to celebrate this milestone with us. We'd appreciate that, I told him. But something modest, within your budget. No second mortgages for floral arrangements. He laughed, a real laugh, that acknowledged our shared understanding of the past while looking toward a healthier future. The wedding planning brought another surprise. Cassie offered to help Amanda with various details, from venue research to decoration ideas. Though initially skeptical, Amanda gave her a chance, and they developed a tentative friendship based on their shared creative sensibilities. She's actually got great taste when she's not trying to impress everyone, Amanda observed. And she seems genuinely happy for us. Our wedding day arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon, with just 40 guests gathered in the garden of a historic home in Columbus. My parents beamed with a pride that, for once, felt directed at me without reservation. Cassie served as one of Amanda's bridesmaids, handling her role with uncharacteristic humility and grace. During the reception, as Amanda and I moved among our guests, I overheard a conversation between my father and a family friend. "You must be so proud of Sterling," the friend was saying. "Such a success in business. And now married to this wonderful woman." "I am proud of him," my father replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just for what he's achieved, but for who he is. He's taught me more about integrity and forgiveness than anyone I've ever known." Hearing these words, spoken not to me but about me when he didn't know I was listening, felt like the closing of a circle that had been open my entire life. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down, I found myself alone with Cassie for a moment, on the venue's stone terrace. "Thank you for including me today," she said, looking out at the garden rather than at me. "After everything that happened, you would have been justified in cutting me out completely. That's not what family should be about," I replied. "At least, not the kind of family I want to build going forward." She nodded, finally turning to meet my gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about siblings helping each other grow. I've never been much of a sister to you. Have I?" "We never really had a chance to learn how," I said. "We were too busy playing the roles assigned to us. Golden child and forgotten son," she murmured. "What a waste of 30 years. "Not a waste," I corrected her. "A lesson. One that's making us both stronger now." In the year following our wedding, the healing continued, with both progress and occasional setbacks. My parents maintained their financial counseling, gradually rebuilding their retirement savings with a discipline they'd never before exercised. Cassie completed her business courses and, with my guidance, launched a modest but viable online business selling curated vintage clothing, a venture suited to her genuine interest in fashion, but structured with proper business practices. Rather than blindly funding her, I helped her secure a small business loan and taught her how to create and follow a business plan. The pride she felt in making her first loan payment was visible on her face, a new kind of confidence built on actual achievement rather than entitlement. Perhaps my most meaningful contribution came not through individual actions but through the establishment of the Westlake Family Foundation, an organization I created with $3 million of my fortune. The foundation focused on two primary areas: financial literacy, education for young people, and family counseling services for those struggling with the kind of dynamics that had shaped our lives. "This is your legacy, Sterling," Amanda told me as we reviewed the Foundation's first annual report. "Taking the pain of your past and transforming it into help for others." 2 years after the revelation that had changed everything, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' home. The house looked better than it had in years, with necessary repairs finally completed, and a fresh coat of paint brightening the exterior. Inside, the atmosphere was relaxed and genuine in a way it had never been during my childhood. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with coffee and pie, my father raised his mug in an impromptu toast. "To second chances," he said, his eyes moving from face to face around the room, "and to truth, however difficult it might be to face." "To truth," we echoed, the word carrying different significance for each of us. Later that evening, as Amanda and I prepared to leave, I found myself standing in the hallway, looking at a new addition to the wall. A family photo taken at our wedding, all four of us together, smiling, genuine smiles that reached our eyes. "We've come a long way," my mother said, coming to stand beside me. "Thanks to you. Thanks to all of us," I corrected her. "It took everyone's effort to break the old patterns." She touched my arm gently. "You were the catalyst, Sterling. You had the courage to speak the truth when the rest of us were too afraid. You offered a path forward when you could have just walked away." As we drove home that night, Amanda rested her head on my shoulder, her hand unconsciously moving to her slightly rounded belly, where our first child was growing. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About cycles," I replied. "About how hard they are to break, but how important it is to try. Our child won't grow up in the shadow of a favored sibling," she promised. "We'll do better." "We will," I agreed. "Because we know better now. That's the real value of everything that happened. Not the money I made or the success I achieved, but the understanding I gained about what truly matters. Honesty, fairness, and the courage to speak difficult truths with love. In the end, the $13 million that had been the catalyst for our family's transformation meant far less than the emotional wealth we'd built through our healing work. The neglected child had indeed become the family cornerstone, not through bitterness or revenge, but through the harder, braver path of truth and forgiveness. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't yet complete. There would always be moments of old patterns threatening to resurface, old wounds reopening under stress. But now we face those challenges together, with awareness and commitment to something better. And in that commitment, I found a peace I'd never known was possible growing up as the forgotten child of a family built on secrets. Have you ever had to confront painful family dynamics? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening. And I wish you courage on your own journey toward family healing.